Hey, what's up guys? Matt with the Movement System. In this video, we're gonna cover CSCS nutrition and specifically some of the recent updates. As of 2024, this is still the current edition of the CSCS book, although this is getting old and is likely to be updated in 2025 to the 5th edition. That said, there have been some updates since the publication of this book that we're gonna cover in this video. Specifically, there was an error with the Cunningham equation and how you calculate daily energy expenditure. And also there have been some updates to protein requirements. The protein requirements in this book for endurance athletes are way too low. Luckily, those have been updated. In this video, we're gonna cover those updated recommendations and go through some examples so you know exactly how to use them and you're comfortable doing those calculations before you go on to your CSCS exam. Before we get started, I do wanna mention we do have a free CSCS study group on Facebook. So if you're interested in seeing how other people are studying for the exam, people share Quizlets there. We do practice questions every week, live videos, things like that. You can join the strength and conditioning study group. I'll put a link in the description below. All right. Let's go ahead and get started. This video is gonna be in 4 parts. Part 1, we're gonna do total daily energy expenditure, which is basically the same thing as saying maintenance calories. So we're gonna figure out for different athletes, how many calories are they actually consuming per day? We can do that with an equation that's called the Cunningham equation. That's what we're gonna go through today. Second part, we're gonna go through protein and the updated protein requirements for different athletes. We're also gonna cover if you need to change those protein recommendations for gaining weight or losing weight. It's really important that we know those caveats so we can answer questions correctly. Third, we're gonna cover carbohydrate recommendations. That's gonna be different for endurance athletes, for someone preparing for a competition, or for maintenance for strength athletes. So we're gonna cover those different recommendations, what you need to know there. And then lastly, we'll cover fat. For fat, there aren't athlete-specific recommendations, so we're just gonna go by the RDA, but that is something you're gonna need to know and practice. So that's gonna be the 4 parts. Let's go and dive right in, starting with the total daily energy expenditure. All right, so when we're trying to figure out how many calories per day an athlete burns, we're gonna need to do an equation to estimate this. There's kind of 2 parts to this. First, we're gonna find the athlete's resting metabolic rate, and then second, we're gonna multiply that by an activity factor. That's gonna go from the base metabolic rate that they're consuming per day to how many calories they're actually burning, including the activity that they're doing. So with these 2 parts together in the equation, you'll be able to know how many calories by estimate your athlete is actually consuming per day. All right, so the first part of this is the Cunningham equation. The Cunningham equation, importantly, gets you resting metabolic rate. So this is just going to get you the amount of calories that the athlete would burn in a day if they were just resting. It's not gonna take into account activity. That's when we're gonna have to use the activity factor, and we'll do that second. The correct Cunningham equation is 500 plus 22 times lean body mass in kilograms. Depending on when your 4th edition book was printed, it might have 550, but that is an error that has been updated. The correct equation again is 500 plus 22 times lean body mass in kilograms. All right, so let's go ahead through an example, and I think this will make a lot of sense. So let's use the example of an in-season female college basketball player that is 20% body fat. She's resistance training 2 times per week. She's doing basketball training 3 times per week and is walking 10,000 steps per day. Our goal is to use the Cunningham equation to first find her RMR, her resting metabolic rate. The first step here is going to be finding out her lean body mass. We know that she is 60 kilograms, and that weight is usually given in both pounds and kilograms on the exam. But if you were given a weight in pounds that you had to convert to kilograms, you would just divide by 2.2. But in this case, we're already at kilograms, so we're just gonna take that 60 kilograms and then we're gonna multiply that by 0.2. That's gonna get us 12 kilograms of body fat. Now, because she's 60 kilograms of total mass, 12 kilograms of body fat, that's 48 kilograms of lean body mass. Another way to get to that exact same number would just be doing that 60 kilograms times 0.8. That's her lean body percentage. And that would also get you to that 48 kilograms of lean body mass. All right, next step, we're just gonna plug that lean body mass into the Cunningham equation. In this case, 500 plus 22 times 48 kilograms. Practice doing this by hand because there's no calculator on the exam. We then add that 1,056 to 500 to get 1,556 calories as the estimated resting metabolic rate of this athlete. Now, the second part of this is going to be turning that resting metabolic rate into a total daily energy expenditure estimate. The way we're gonna do that is with an activity factor that can range from 1.2 to 1.9. Let's go ahead and put some of the guidelines up to determine where that activity factor is for this athlete. 1.2 would be little or no exercise and less than 5,000 steps per day. 1.375 would be light exercise or sports 1 to 3 days per week at or under 10,000 steps per day. 1.55 would be moderate intensity exercise or sports 3 to 5 days per week, 10,000 steps per day. 1.725 is hard exercise / sports 6 to 7 days per week, 10,000 steps per day. 1.9 is very hard exercise in sports in physical job or training 2 times per day, 10,000 steps per day. In this case, the most appropriate recommendation for this athlete is using that 1.55 activity factor. It is pretty hard to memorize these entire guidelines on the activity factors. I would just do a couple examples and trying to get really close, at least within 0.1. All right, so knowing that this athlete is 1.55, we'd take 1,556 calories that we got as her resting metabolic rate, multiply by 1.55 and get 2,412 calories as the estimated total daily energy expenditure for this athlete. If this athlete wants to gain or lose body weight, we may choose to increase daily calories by around 10 to 15% or decrease daily calories by around 10 to 15%. If we were to drop 500 calories per day, a 500 calorie daily deficit, that would put this athlete on track to lose 1 pound per week. If we're sticking with maybe 250 calories per day as a daily deficit, then that would take 2 weeks to lose 1 pound. All right, so that's the basics on calculating daily energy expenditure. Now let's move on to protein. And this is where some of the recommendations have been updated. Here's the biggest update. Maintenance protein for now both endurance athletes and strength athletes is recommended to be between 1.4 and 1.8 grams per kilogram body weight per day. That means that both endurance athletes and strength athletes are going to use these same recommendations, assuming that they're trying to maintain their body weight. That said, there are different recommendations in the case of an athlete who's trying to gain weight or lose weight. In both cases, the protein recommendation is higher. In the case of an athlete trying to gain weight, the recommended protein intake is 1.5 to 2.0 grams per kilogram body weight per day. In the case of a calorie deficit, an athlete's trying to lose weight but maintain their lean body mass, that recommendation is going to be 1.8 to 2.7 grams per kilogram body weight per day. Again, these are the current recommendations based on the updated evidence since the publication of this book. This is what you should use on the exam. You can always email the NSCA or something like that to confirm if you want to, but this is the current 2024 recommendations. And if there are any future updates, I'll leave those in the description below or the comments below. All right, for the case of simplicity, let's use the same 60 kilogram female basketball player as the next example. We're gonna calculate her maintenance protein calories. Because that recommendation is between 1.4 and 1.8 grams per kilogram body weight per day, we're gonna take 60 kilograms, multiply by 1.4. She needs to be consuming a minimum of 84 grams of protein, and at the maximum, she would need to be consuming 60 kilograms times 1.8 or 108 grams of protein. So if you were evaluating her protein intake and it was 75, 80, 82 grams, anything less than the minimum, then she would need to increase her protein intake. If she was consuming higher than the maximum, she would need to decrease protein intake. For a calorie deficit using the 1.8 to 2.7 grams per kilogram body weight range, we would get a value of 108 to 162 grams of protein per day. This would again be the recommendation for her if she was trying to lose weight but maintain lean body mass. If you guys do have any questions as we're going through these equations and these numbers, feel free to leave a comment below, or again, you can join our CSCS study group in the description below and ask questions there. This is also a good time to mention that I have several CSCS podcast episodes that you can check out on Spotify. I will leave a link to those in the description below. All right, next let's go ahead and cover the carbohydrate recommendations. For endurance athletes, these carbohydrate recommendations are 8 to 10 grams per kilogram body weight per day. If this endurance athlete is leading up to a competition and is carbohydrate loading, that can increase to 10 to 12 grams per kilogram body weight per day. For strength athletes, the carbohydrate recommendations are significantly less at 5 to 6 grams per kilogram body weight per day. For the example earlier of our basketball player who is doing multiple resistance training sessions per week and basketball training, we would use the strength athlete recommendations and we would multiply her 60 kilogram body weight by 5 and 6, and we would come to the range of 300 to 360 grams of carbohydrate per day. All right, now we're gonna move on to the fat recommendations. This one's a little bit different because there's not an athlete-specific recommendation that is based on body weight. Rather, this one remains a percentage of total daily calories. I know it's confusing, but that's the way it works. We just follow the RDA, which is 20 to 35% of daily calories coming from fat. So the way we would actually calculate this for this athlete is we would look at her total daily energy expenditure, that 2,412 calories. We would now multiply by the bottom and the upper range here, 20% and 35%. This would get us 482 to 844 calories worth of fat. And this is important. This is where some people make mistakes here. This is calories of fat, not grams. That'd be a ton of grams, and that would definitely throw off your equations and give you the wrong answer. So what you need to do now is take that 482 calories and divide by 9, because there are 9 calories per gram of fat. In the case of both carbs and protein, it's 4 calories per gram. But if we take the 482 and we divide that by 9, that gets us 54 grams of fat. On the top end at 35%, we had 844 calories. We divide that by 9, and that gets us 94 grams of fat. So we know for this athlete, her range would be 54 to 94 grams. Now, at this point, knowing the recommended fat, protein, and carbohydrate, we can actually answer more complex questions where we have to decide if we want to increase carbs, decrease fat, increase protein, decrease carbs, or vice versa. Now, knowing all the ranges, you would just look at the current intake and see which of those 3 numbers is above the intake, you need to decrease it, which of the numbers is below the intake, we need to increase it, and you'll probably come to the conclusion that 1 needs to increase, 1 needs to decrease, or maybe 2 need to increase or 2 need to decrease. It does take a lot of practice in seeing different types of questions. Some questions where they're asking questions in calories, some where they're asking questions in grams, some where it's maintenance, some where it's surplus, some where it's a deficit. And doing a bunch of different examples of practice questions can get you really comfortable going into the exam and making sure that you know you're gonna ace that section and not miss any points. Hopefully this video is really helpful in getting you more confidence with that. But if you do want more practice questions, you can check out our full CSCS study course at themovementsystem.com. That study course has entire in-depth study videos for each chapter of the exam, not just nutrition, but every chapter. It's videos like this where I walk through the equations and talk about how you use it with athletes, how it works, and help you really understand the numbers that you need to know. The study course also includes over 150 exercise technique videos that you won't find anywhere else, and tons of program examples, over 300 practice questions in total, and it's helped a lot of people pass the CSCS exam. So if you want to check that out, just head to themovementsystem.com and check it out. All right, thanks so much for watching, guys. Subscribe so you don't miss any future videos, and I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks.